I can still see the information that's being shared. I have a little bit more of like a farm perspective, I guess, in the chat today that I wanted to share. And this is actually, I just realized the first time that I've forgotten to bring my Alberta flag with me. I bring it with me to everyone, and it's almost maybe it's like my security blanket for speaking in front of people or something. I'm not sure, but it is the same flag that I fly on my combine every harvest. Up until last year, my dad would always fly a Canadian flag, but he actually flew it upside down because he really felt like our country was in distress. And this last year, he got an Alberta flag, and he's very proud and flies that one as well. So I'm not here as anything other than a farmer and just a regular average person today, and someone who just absolutely loves this province and this land with everything I've got. And if my flag was here, I'd be holding it up there to show it to you right now, because this last harvest, every day that I would walk across the fields to my combine, I would see that flag waving up in the sky, and I would see my family working together. My dad driving the other combine, someone driving the semi, another one driving the grain cart. And that's when I found that I enjoyed my life the most. That's where I felt peace. I wasn't thinking about Ottawa. I wasn't thinking about politics. I was just thinking about the land, the sky, the work in front of us, and the people that I loved that were all in the field with me. And to me, that's what freedom feels like in my little corner of Alberta. And in those moments, I often find myself thinking about my dad and his grit, his courage, and his determination. He's the kind of man who just showed up every single day. When we had cattle, he would hand pail them. And he had these big metal pails. He'd fill out of the old wooden granary. And I can still picture it, and even the sound actually of him scraping those pails, filling them up, and the sound of his boots on that mud and snow. And he'd walk out there steady and deliberate, like we had 1,000 times before, and it didn't matter if it was minus 30 or going sideways, or just one of those days where nothing seemed right, because the cattle still had to be fed, and he just had to do his job. And over the years of that grit and determination, he built something, a life where hard work meant something, a life that could support a family, a life where you could look around at what you had and know that you had earned it. But when I look at Alberta today, and I try to look at it through his eyes, I can't ignore that something has changed. Not all at once, but slowly. We've been chipped away at. My dad went through the National Energy Program, and if you weren't here for that, it's almost hard to fully understand what it did to this province, because it wasn't just policy. It hit Alberta very hard. Investment pulled back, projects were canceled, companies left, people lost jobs, businesses shut their doors, and families that had been doing really, really well were really, really struggling. And what's always stayed with me from hearing those terrible stories at that time is that it wasn't just a policy that didn't work out the way people hoped. It worked out exactly as it was intended. Mark Lalonde, who was the federal energy minister at the time, said, "We couldn't let Alberta become the economic center of power in Canada." So when they saw Alberta rising up, and they deliberately cut us down, and they've kept cutting ever since. Many of you probably remember the Canadian Wheat Board. It might be easy to brush past that if you haven't lived it or if you're not a farmer, but for farmers here, it was a big deal. You could do everything right. You could seed your crop, manage it all summer, get it all in the fall, and then a Western monopoly system decided when it was sold, who it was sold to, and for what price. Meanwhile, farmers in Eastern Canada didn't have to deal with that. They could market the grain however they wanted to. And eventually, a courageous group of farmers, including my friend and former MLA Rick Strankman, had the audacity to load up their grain and take it across the border to sell it themselves. They were arrested, taken to court. One of them was brought into the court appearance in shackles for selling grain that they had grown themselves. There were court cases and years of pressure, more farmers speaking up, and eventually it became really hard to justify why Western farmers were being treated differently than the rest of the country. And over time, that pressure built to a point they couldn't ignore anymore. And in 2012, it was Stephen Harper who finally removed the single desk monopoly, and Western farmers were allowed to finally market their own grain. This story I tell you because it happened because people were willing to step outside what was expected of them. and take the risk of pushing back. And when I look at Alberta today, I recognize that same feeling. The sense that decisions are being made farther and farther away, and we're the ones living with what comes from them. You see it in fuel prices climbing, in carbon taxes layered onto everything. You see it when fertilizer prices double from last year, and a decision made somewhere else affects the cost of all of our inputs. Even things that seem far removed, like for example, the tariffs that they placed on Chinese EVs, that came back and hit Western Canada with the retaliatory tariffs on canola. And after a while, it stops feeling random. It feels a bit targeted. It feels like no matter how hard you work, you're pushing against something that you don't actually control. And when you step back and actually look at the numbers, it explains why. Since 1961, Alberta has sent over $800 billion more to Ottawa than we've received back in terms of services. That's now upwards of about $28 billion leaving this province every single year, or roughly $6,000 per Albertan, or for a family of four, $24,000 that is sent away that has lost services for your family. We see estimates reaching into the hundreds of billions and even trillions of dollars when you look at the multiplier for the pipeline cancellations and the investment that's left this province. Restrictions on our energy sector cost Alberta over $26.5 billion every year. And that's like a whole lot of billions that I just said. And I think we kind of lose track a bit about what $1 billion is when we talk about government waste and taxes. I think we're very disconnected from the scope of that money. So let's imagine for a second that the government decided to collect the $28 billion that Alberta overpays every year directly from each Albertan in $20 bills. So one day, a semi-truck shows up with a big shipping container behind it, and it comes to your door and asks for your share, your $6,000. So you go to your stash and you count out 300 $20 bills and hand it over. And then they say, oh, wait, we need that from your husband or your wife as well. So then counts out 300 $20 bills. And then they go to each of your kids and then to your neighbors and every single person in your community and eventually across the entire province. By the time they're done, every 2 shipping containers of $20 bills is $1 billion. So at the end, they've got 56 shipping containers full of the $20 bills from Albertans. And they start driving away, and you wave them off or you give them the finger. And half of those shipping containers go directly to Quebec. So imagine what that money could do if it actually stayed here in Alberta. And yet, even when you talk about the billions that are leaving, many people still ask, can't we fix this from within Canada? And that's a fair question, but we need to look at it because honestly, we have tried. This is not something new. From the very beginning, in fact, Alberta was never meant to be equal. In 1904, Clifford Sifton, who was the federal minister responsible for bringing Alberta into Confederation, said, and this is his quote, "We desire that the great trade and wealth of the prairies shall go to enrich our people in the East, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way contribute to our prosperity." That wasn't about Alberta's prosperity. That was about using Alberta as a colony to fund Ontario and Quebec. Because unlike the other provinces, Saskatchewan and Alberta didn't get to negotiate our way into Confederation. We were just told how it was going to be. It took us actually back until 1930 with the Natural Resources Transfer Act for Alberta to even gain control of our own resources. And then in 1947, with the Leduc oil discovery, Ottawa really started to take notice of us. And eventually this leads us to the 1980s with the National Energy Program, where Alberta was targeted to lose billions. Later on in the 80s and 90s, we had the Beach Lake and Charlottetown Accords. Both constitutional reforms have failed. And I'd like to explain why, because I just learned this in the last couple of years from listening to Dr. Mowbray speak actually as well. Not something that they always teach in school. In order to open up Canada's constitution, you need to clear 4 hurdles. And the first hurdle is you need to have 7 out of 10 provinces in agreement, representing over 50% of the population. Ontario and Quebec have 60% of the population, so you're definitely going to need one of them on side. So that's looking pretty bleak right now. The second hurdle is you need to have a majority vote in House of Commons. You have to pass that. The third hurdle is you then need a majority vote in the Senate. And if you somehow miraculously got through those three hurdles, the fourth one is a killer because Quebec basically has a de facto veto. So let's be honest, the chance of forcing a constitutional change, such as removing equalization payments, is pretty much zero. Then came the 1990s and the Reform Party. It was born out of Western frustration, and people here felt like we didn't have a real voice in Ottawa. So the idea was simple: we're going to fix it from within. They pushed for Senate reform, better representation, more accountability, and they gained a lot of support here in Alberta. But when you look at it now, we're still having those exact same conversations. Then skip ahead to 2001, we had the firewall letter, where Alberta's own Stephen Harper and Ted Morton and some others demanded that Alberta control pensions, policing, and taxation. Does that sound familiar? Because 25 years later, we're still asking for the exact same things. In 2019, we had the Fair Deal panel, where Albertans asked for fairness, and again, Ottawa just shrugged. And then in 2021, we had the equalization referendum, where 62% of Albertans voted to abolish equalization, knowing though that this requires opening up the Constitution and knowing the insurmountable hurdles for Alberta to do so. I'm pretty sure that Ottawa just laughed at us and then carried on. So the point of this is that it's not that we haven't tried. We've been trying for over 100 years. Every time Alberta tried to fix this confederation from the inside, the answer was the same: no. So maybe it is finally time to try something new and bold and courageous. And that's where I come back to my dad again, because he didn't spend his life waiting for perfect conditions or all the answers or a perfectly laid out path for him to travel. He called on his grit and he worked with what he had and he built something anyways. And now I look at my kids and I think about what they're stepping into. Maybe Forever Canada is right and that doing nothing feels safer, but it isn't neutral. Things are changing whether we act or not, and not in a direction most of us would choose. And the more I've watched it, the more I've tried to be honest about it, the clearer it's become to me that the certainty of where Canada is headed is far scarier than any uncertainty of forming something new. And all of this is leading us towards a moment. One moment, referendum day, when Albertans walk into a polling station and are handed a ballot that asks a question that no generation before us has ever been asked in Alberta. And I've thought about that moment a great deal. And even now I get goosebumps on my cheeks when I think about it. Walking in, taking that ballot, and stopping for a second before you mark it. Because in that moment, I hope you'll realize what it actually represents. More than just your opinion, more than just a vote. It's everything that brought us to that point. It's thousands and thousands of people, thousands of canvassers, decades and decades of effort. People like my dad, who showed up every day and built a life here, or people like my friend Rick, who were willing to stand when something didn't feel right, even when it cost them. People like the thousands of petition canvassers giving so much of their time to collect signatures in the wind and the cold and the snow of Alberta. People who gave everything to fight for our freedom. And all of that comes down to one mark on a piece of paper. And I think in that moment, there should be a pause. We should all pause long enough to really take it in, to understand what's being asked, what it means, and what comes next. Because a moment like that may not ever come again in our lifetime. So when that day comes, October 19th, 2026, and you're standing there with that ballot in your hand, just stop and sit in the reverence for a moment and really understand what you're part of. Because when I picture that moment, I know I won't just see a ballot. I'll see that field and that flag moving in the wind above my combine, and I will think about the life that was built here and the life that still could be built. So thank you so much for coming today, and may Alberta be forever strong and free.
What an interesting speech, isn't it? And what surprised, oh yeah, that's what surprised me is the amount of Alberta flags on my way here to from Macleod. You can see everywhere, which is kind of amazing. Our next speaker, and I'm very humbled to have it on stage, is actually Corey Morgan. The first time I met Corey Morgan was in Westcott. He was doing a talk about, I think it was about a pension plan with Canada Day and a bunch of other people, I guess. And he has a skin of his book, the subject book. We can actually get on the back and let's see how many books we have. We have one left. Oh my goodness. So who's going to be the lucky one going to get this book? And he is he's a senior columnist for the Western Standard, and he brings lots of experience with campaigning, how to convince people who are essentially in the middle of the independence movement, or undecided but decided, kind of in the middle. And he brings lots of experience with the media aspect of things. So without further ado, please welcome Corey Morgan. This guy is smart. Way smarter than I am.
Thanks, Max. So as you can see, I'm not an AI generation.
I am.
Yeah, he is. I'll get into more of that in a minute. It's getting kind of weird to break you out there. If you were wondering, my pronouns are he, him. I'll answer to pretty much anything. Hey, you, whatever. There's another names my wife calls me. I won't mention up here. And I'm on permanently ceded land as per Treaty 7. That's the knowledge that I have to know. So these meetings have been going fantastic. It's just been great. I can't thank Chris and Max and Tanya and the volunteers and people who have been putting this on enough. I have been doing this for quite some time. I had been taking my books to those, the Sovereignist Handbook, and I'm still underestimating the turnouts at these events. So I don't know how many it's been now, and I just got sold out. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but I just can't order them in fast enough to keep up. So it's a good trend. And I for some of my history, I won't give the whole biography, but let's say I've been stubbornly at this for a long time. I started the Alberta Independence Party back in 1999 when I was 29 years old, and blew it up about mid-2000, as we tend to do as inexperienced, crazed politicians. But learned a heck of a lot at that time and since then. I've been watching independence closely for pretty much all of my adult life and supporting it. But I've never seen it like it is now. We've had the ebbs and flows, we've had the rushes, we've had these times when Albertans have become infuriated and they're ready to go and they spawn some parties and there's a bunch of editorials and there's a bunch of public meetings, and then 8 months later we kind of just go back to it. And we've done that over and over and over again. But this time something is different. In fact, it's not even just staying stable, it's growing. As Max checked out right at the beginning, and we're seeing this in every one of these meetings, we're seeing new faces at them. It's not a bunch of us same old characters getting together, scratching each other's backs and crying on each other's shoulders. It's new people saying, I've had enough. I've got to find a new alternative, and I'm going to come to one of these meetings and find out what it's about. We've never had a ground organization like we've seen now. People are engaged in a way like we never did before. We almost accidentally fell into, I think, the perfect formula to make this actually take root and be organized, because we have no regular bank. We have no particular central figure that's been pulling all this together. It's actually just been a movement of thousands and thousands of Albertans who have come to the same conclusion and are working towards bringing that in, which is an independent Alberta. And the petitioning process has given a perfect exercise just to get people together, get them signing up. Over 7,000 people signed up, gave their ID, registered just to be canvassers to get the petitioning going, to get a referendum going. Political parties have won provincial elections with a quarter of that many members. That's an impressive amount of people. If they've gone to that much trouble, and I've seen them on the highways in the roaring wind, I've seen them in the cities where they're getting abused, literally spit at. The guy had a cigarette butt pressed in his face. This is going to get ugly, guys. Most of the interactions have been positive. Most people are pretty good, even federalists. Most of them at least say, let's grumble and move along. But unfortunately, there are going to be some lunatics. There's going to be some triggered people. And we're going to deal with that. And as this gets closer to reality, as the federalists realize that this is real, this can't be dismissed anymore, this could happen. It better happen. It's up to us. They're going to fight harder. They're going to fight dirtier. And we've got to be prepared for that. And this part of the reason it gets like this is because a lot of what we're asking for, a lot of what we're looking to do is emotionally based. It triggers a lot of strong feelings with people. We can make the economic case for independence. That's the easiest case in the world. That's a balance sheet. And it shows very clearly that we're going to be economically better as an independent nation. But getting past that emotional connection to the concept of Canada with a lot of people is difficult. I mean, not everybody votes like a computer. We aren't rational beings when it comes to that. An emotional vote for a no is still a vote for a no. And it means we can't counter those people's feelings by just printing out sheets and showing the economics or showing some of the better freedoms in other countries and things like that. We need all that information. But we need to connect with those people and make them reevaluate their connection with what they thought Canada was. And that takes one-on-one conversations. That takes the volunteers that we have, the people that are coming out tonight. That takes going door to door. I've worked on a fair amount of campaigns before, and you notice even the most advanced and well-funded campaigns politically, still what do whenever they possibly can? They get their candidate knocking at every door they possibly can. Because the best way to move a person, even if it's 30 seconds, assuming you've got a decent candidate, of looking somebody in the eye and chatting with them is going to move them more than a bunch of demon dial phone calls or emails or YouTube videos or paid advertisements or columns written by a blowhard like me. It's the one-on-one conversations. And I think Albertans are realizing that. There's been a number of reasons for that. A lot of things have happened. We're finally moving into that perfect storm. COVID was one of them. This is a negative that we can turn into a positive in the way. Because COVID woke a hell of a lot of people up, a lot of complacent people up, realizing that we are vulnerable to an authoritarian government. We can suddenly get our businesses shut down, our kids shut out of school, our travel suspended. We can have a medication we may feel uncomfortable about coerced upon us. Oh, you had a choice. Yeah, you got a choice. You know, as long as you want to lose your job, never eat out, never meet with people. By all means, you have a choice. That's not a choice. I mean, at past that terrible period, we've seen with that rear view mirror, court ruling after court ruling, oh yeah, I guess the government did overstep. Oh, I guess they were wrong. Oh, I guess we should drop those charges over there. You know, sorry about that. My bad. That's not good enough. There were no consequences for those who overstepped. Or profiteering. Arrived can app. These guys made tens of millions of dollars over COVID. And I saw the latest ruling years later, they might have to pay $40,000 in legal fees. Not a bad return on investment, is it? But to make people realize that the system is broken, the system is dangerous. And we are one more outbreak away from being locked down again because nothing has changed to stop that. And people have differing views since the pandemic. I mean, I differed with others. I got vaccinated, but I'm pro-choice. It never should have been pushed on anybody. It never should have been up to the point of passports. It should have been choices for individuals. And the choice goes two ways with that. And it didn't go two ways during the pandemic. I was infuriated watching our authoritarian government pushing things like medical choices, which are personal on individuals. And of course, there were thousands and millions of people around the world realizing this. But what are we going to do? So that woke people up. The next thing that came along, and again, I have, if you know me online, I have my differences with David Parker, but he did a very impressive thing. He wanted to take Jason Kenney out of power as the premier, and he looked around and he activated the tools of the party system by realizing you can buy memberships in enough constituency associations to force a review and then have an open vote and have the premier pulled down. He's held meetings like this all over the place, signed up thousands of people, and it worked. Whether people like it or don't like it, it worked. It led to the end of a premier who had just been elected a couple of years before that. Parker kind of moved his own way, but something, again, people learned, thousands of people learned, and they kept renewing their memberships. They kept buying their memberships. Kenny was years in the rearview mirror, yet 6,000 people showed up at an AGM in Red Deer for the UCP. 6,000 paying $100 some, taking a weekend out to hang around at a political convention. This is an engaged province. The average political membership generally in a developed country is 2% of the population. We got 6,000 will show up for something like that. And then again, now the APP was going around. They were organizing. They were holding these meetings years ago. Some of them were fairly empty, some were fairly full, but it was building that base and getting people signed up and engaged and realizing that they have to do it themselves. Nobody else is going to do it for us. And this organic movement came together. It's going great almost despite itself. There's no party mechanism, no past history to give us a guidebook on how to do it. Yet it keeps growing. These rooms are full. People are still going out, and it's got a life of its own, and it's brilliant. But we got to keep it rolling. We've passed almost the first phase now, the petitioning phase, a big one. And we'll see with the courts and so on. It's a separate discussion. I'll have another time again. I'm still very, very confident we're going to get a referendum this fall, whether it's through the petitioning or whether it's the premier scheduling it anyways. But that means the next phase is convincing that large amount that are still there of undecided people. And that's the bulk. I think we got polls all over, but I think it's kind of the thirds. We got a third who are ready to go. That we can hold the vote tomorrow, they're going to hold the vote to go. And we got a third that's never going to go. And we need not waste time with that number campaigning. But there's that third in the middle. Those who we have to reach. They're thinking about things, and we've got to connect with them one-on-one over this next 5 months and move them over. And that takes a lot of conversations. And it could be with your coworkers. It could be at a sporting event. It could be somebody you hang out with at the bar. Look for your opportunities to talk to people. And when somebody on the fence, the best way isn't to tell them what's going to be better. Start by asking them. I know, again, blowhards like me, I'm not good at that. I talk too much. I don't learn anything when I love somebody. But when we ask people, then you engage, then you talk. It could take multiple conversations. But when they realize you're genuine, you're having a conversation, that's how you move that emotional needle. When you bring people to their own conclusions and realize this system is broken, they will move towards that yes vote. And they trust you. They don't trust the politicians. They don't trust the media. There's a lot of good reason for all that mistrust. But we trust our neighbors. We trust our coworkers. And that's how this is going to lead to a yes vote this fall. But we've got our work cut out for us. So now that the petitioning is coming to an end, it's going to be a bit of what I fear to be, and I hope not to be, but a bit of a slowdown, because there's not something for people to actually work directly on, participate in. And that's what I remind you, there's nothing stopping you from campaigning in between. There's nothing stopping you from talking to your friends, neighbors. Again, all those other opportunities to speak to people, to be that ambassador for independence and keep moving that cause. And you've got to take it upon yourself to do it. Because the worst thing that can happen is we can start to slow down and become complacent again. And the other thing is countering misinformation, and it's going to be coming in droves. Talking about that AI thing. I don't know if you guys watch Derek Smith, the unacceptable friends. He has his podcast. Driving late last night back from Redcliffe at the other gathering, and I was listening to it. And I guess CTV did a big thing showing out 20 different websites which had AI creations that were putting out US 51 stuff and misinformation and misleading people, and it's this big conspiracy and things like that. But in that article or that show, they also kept showing Derek Smith's website as if he was an AI creation, saying he was a big person. That is pretty pissed. But the irony of legacy media talking about, watch out, you're getting misinformed while they're in the process of misinforming you. While they didn't do the research hard enough to at least click through on a few of these and see if some of these are real or not. How many seconds does it take, tax-funded TV broadcaster, to click on a couple of links and realize maybe this one shouldn't be in the bunch? I think maybe they did. But they don't care. This battle is going to be using misinformation against us all the time. When I came in, I was chatting with a great couple over there, and they had a printout. So there'd been a YouTube video by a realtor who put out just a pro-independence sort of video that went fairly well. And somebody, I'm gonna guess that they use AI because as much as I'm cynical on things, I don't like to think people in humanity are all that stupid. I know, they continue to disappoint. But they put up 50 points against independence in this thing, this response in the YouTube, that they used AI to make it. It has to be AI because they can't be that bloody dumb. And going through some of these, there was, you can't leave because you lose Canada Post. Oh, good Lord. How the hell am I going to get my jump in? Really? But the best of them all was near the bottom. I'm not going to read all 50, but they were all pretty stupid. One said that we would lose Canada's Coast Guard on our rivers and lakes in Alberta. Now, holy shit, we're going to have a carrier coming up the St. Mary River from Montana, and we're able to do about it. This is the extent, though, that our opponents are going to go to. This is just the warm-up. This is the lazy ones. This is the easy ones. This is the low-hanging fruit. They're going to get more organized. They're going to get more subtle with how they push back. And when it's, as I said, it's a battle for the hearts and minds of our fellow Albertans for a yes or no vote this fall. The online platform is important. Media is important. Legacy media, independent media. I don't want to count that as a gift yet. Subscribe to the Western Standard. But again, the most valuable tool you have is yourself. Nobody can get between you and another person. The government can't stop that. AI can't replicate that, not yet anyways. And that genuine engagement, that genuine interaction is how we're going to win people one by one into the thousands, into the hundreds of thousands, and then a couple of million we're going to vote yes and make Alberta independent this fall. So I'll leave it at that because Chris is going to come up and he's going to talk for a little while, and I look forward to the Q&A because these are great engagements. People always have questions, good questions, not about coast guards on our rivers. And they hit some ones that I never thought of. I mean, I learned at these. I become a better advocate for having come out and engaged with people at these events. Just as much as I like to pretend I don't actually know it all, but I know a little bit more every time I come to one of these. So I look forward to the Q&A, and I'll hand the mic off to Max here, and he'll bring Chris up on stage. So thanks, guys.
So thank you very much, Corey. Very interesting stuff. Before going to Chris' competent presentation, Eddie was waiting for him, right? What I'd like to think, I would like to remind you that those tours that we're doing right now takes resources, takes money. We don't do this for free. Donald Trump is not paying us, and no one's taking the salary out of it. We're 100% volunteers, 100% grassroots. So somebody will have a budget, just like church. So you can, if you feel compelled to donate any amount you might possibly think of, it's extremely important because we're essentially touring all over the place. In fact, next week we're going to Gibbons, which is about 30 miles north of Edmonton, and Lloydminster, by the way, on Thursday. That was confirmed. So those tours takes resources, takes time. So feel compelled to contribute as generously as you can. So we have the meat and potatoes. Oh, forgot the pierogies. Do we have pierogies left? Yes or no? Yes, I bet. Chris, go.
I'm gonna stand in front of this thing. I feel like I'm hiding when these things are there. Is it just did Max call me a pierogi? Oh, no, that was good. Yeah, that was great. Well done. Well, thank you all for coming out. It's great to see so many people here. I was actually worried that it wasn't going to be a very big crowd, but I'm pleasantly surprised. Although I didn't realize that the folks at Fort Macleod don't have Ukrainian appetites. You guys eat like Dutch people. There you are. So there, like Max said, there is lots of food left. What we're going to do is we're packaging it all up to go. So and if you want to take some home, throw it in the fridge, you can have lunch for the next week.
or share with your friends, whatever you can chip in to cover that would be awesome because I cook way too much food. Anyhow, I think most of us are here for the same reason. We're kind of moving towards the same goal. But before I assume that, I do want to ask, and please be brave, because it's going to change the way I speak. I don't make notes. This is all at the top of my head. Your feedback is going to change what I speak about tonight. I'd like to know, by raising your hand, if there's anyone in the room that's on the fence, who isn't sure how they want to vote if a referendum on independence happens.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. I know there's always at least one. Okay, well, then that changes how we're talking about this stuff tonight. You're all convinced, so have a great night. Wow, finally for me to leave. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about Alberta's sovereignty within a united Canada. Today I watched a press conference that Premier Smith delivered. And she was talking about some things to do with potential referendum questions on different things. And it occurred to me, now full disclosure, I'm supportive of Premier Smith. I like her. I think she's doing a good job. Don't agree with everything, for sure. But for the most part, I'm pretty supportive. But today, I was quite disappointed. Because there was a little part of me that believed that she wanted a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. And I believed this right from the beginning, because that's what she campaigned on, and we voted for her, so obviously we were supportive of that, right? But today, I heard her say that there was no appetite for Alberta to collect their own taxes. And there's no appetite for Alberta to manage their own pension plan yet. She indicated that if Albertans wanted this, we had to do the work and make it happen. Well, let me tell you something. To win an election in this province is millions of dollars, correct? There's fundraising, there's volunteering, there's door knocking. It is no small feat. Do you know how much more difficult it is as an Albertan, as a citizen, an average everyday person? Do you know how much more difficult it is to advocate for any type of position, let alone a constitutional one? Do you know what kind of hours and resources that takes? Hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars out of our pockets. Hundreds of thousands of labor hours, volunteer hours to do it. So what I heard the Premier say was, if you want an Alberta pension plan, now she knows that it would benefit us, I know it would benefit us, and probably 90% of the people in this room, and probably close to 90% of the UCP know that an Alberta pension plan would benefit us tremendously. It's just a math problem, it's not difficult. But she said, if you want it, you have to make it happen, I'm not going to do it. And that really kind of irked me. I'm here in Fort Macleod instead of at home with my son. I'm traveling around the province. I have been for years. I'm taking little breaks here and there. I'm going to be traveling across the province for the next however many days until October, middle of October, away from my family, missing things. I'm at the time of my life where I'm starting to realize the value of time. I look back at the time I lost with my kids for doing stupid, selfish things that we all do. You know, we want to go do this and we don't take our kids. We want to go do that, whatever. And I realized that the price I paid for that was in hindsight, it's more than I would have paid. I don't know. And now we're being asked to give up more of our time. The government's not going to do it for us. They're not going to run any kind of campaigns to advocate for positions that would benefit Albertans, except for a few. One that they're going to run campaigns on, I think, is an Alberta Immigration Department, Alberta Police Force, and there was one other one I can't remember, potentially. But these other ones that are important to us, and Alberta Pension Plan will put more money in your pocket, period. I don't care what you feel about Canada Pension Plan. I don't care what you feel about Canada. The math says it would put more money in your pocket. An Alberta Revenue Agency would completely turn the table and lay the foundation for a sovereign Alberta, which is what the Premier's advocating for, a sovereign Alberta within United Canada. But they can't even advocate for the basic things that lay the groundwork to do that. How can Alberta be sovereign within a United Canada if we don't even collect our damn taxes? How can Alberta be sovereign within a United Canada if we allow the federal government to collect taxes on our behalf? That's how it goes. They collect Alberta taxes. The only thing Alberta collects is Alberta corporate tax. They take it, and then by their infinite compassion, they give it back to us in the form of transfers, with a little off the top. A lot of times they send us back money with strings. Not too long ago, they said, well, Alberta, we're going to give you $1.5 billion or something like that. It's a big number for health, because we believe in your health, the health of the people. But the only condition is, now keep in mind, this is our money they're giving back. The only condition is that you, Alberta government, have to give us all the health records digitally from now forever for all citizens. We want to know what shots they took. We want to know when they went to the doctor. We want to know everything. That's our money. How can Alberta be sovereign within a United Canada if we're subject to that? And this goes so much further than that. Industrial carbon tax, they just take it. We don't cut them a check. We don't pay it. They take it and then give us the scraps back. That is not sovereignty. That's subjugation. And I have a big problem with that. Not because, I don't like how our democracy is. I don't like the democratic outcome of an election or something like that, because I know we can't change it. Alberta cannot change those things. Premier Smith knows that. Her caucus knows that. Every single one of them know. We know. We know as Albertans that if the election is called at 8:09 and our ballot boxes haven't even been delivered to the counting stations yet, we can't change it. That's not sovereignty. The idea of a sovereign Alberta within a United Canada is a myth. It's crap. It's political maneuvering because our politicians are not bold enough to do the things that need to be done. I might sound a little bit fired up right now, and it's because I am. When I've watched Premier Smith do some things like stand up for kids and stand up for parents, I watched as she put herself out there and she took the Rotten Tomatoes from the lunatics that want to groom our kids and take away parents' rights. I watched her bear that burden almost alone. It's not her caucus that does it. It's not the deputy ministers. It's her. She stands and takes the Rotten Tomatoes. And I was proud of her. So proud. And I still am proud of her for a lot of things. But to watch our government fail to do the bold things that need to be done, even to achieve what they told us they wanted to do, that is disheartening. Very much so. Sovereign Alberta within the United Canada. Don't even collect our own taxes. Not going to manage our own pension plan. Going to continue to allow Ottawa to milk Alberta and give us back scraps. Jason Kenney, he had a debate with Professor Bruce Party from Ontario, and he indicated that Albertans just need to be happy with the incremental gains. An incremental gain is a crumb. You Albertans need to be happy with the crumbs that you get from the federal government. Well, I'm not happy with that. You want to talk about sovereign within Canada? Quebec has an entire group of bureaucrats. My friend Benoit says it's like 600 people that sit in Gatineau across the river from Parliament. And they look at every dollar that goes out of Quebec to the federal government, and they make sure that every dollar comes back as a service. We don't even collect our taxes. And what do we get for this? What do we get for this $600 billion contribution to the federal machine that is Canada? Our ballot boxes don't even get open. And we have to live with a federal government that we did not choose. We did not advocate for. We were completely opposed to. I am so thankful to see rooms like this filling up over and over and over again, even though people are starting to get exhausted with this. I'm exhausted with this. I don't want to spend any more of my time doing this. I want to spend time with my family. I want to grow a garden. I want to read a book. I don't want to have to read books via my car stereo as I'm traveling to an event to advocate for a better future for this province. I do it because it's necessary. Because there are other people who we actually elect and pay to do it who won't. That's why I do it. I don't want to. And I'm sure most of you maybe, well, I mean, this is kind of fun. There's pierogies. But there's things we would rather be doing. We would rather be living our lives, correct? But for the last 6 years in this province in particular, and I'm talking like post-COVID, we have been attending meetings like this just about weekly. There's been lulls where we've had an open summer, open for good, and there's a stampede and we go do something fun. But I haven't been fishing in 5 years. People are exhausted and you're still coming out. And it's not just for Macleod, this is everywhere. We're doing this because we know there's a better way. And this is why I'm so hopeful, even though I sound angry, but I am a little angry, and that's okay. You're allowed to be angry, by the way. I'm hopeful because what we're doing has nothing to do with politicians. I'm not controlled by a politician. None of them tell me what to do. I don't have somebody that, actually, I've had people offer to financially back this tour. It's expensive. Do the math, it's about $2,000 per event. We want to do 250 events. It's $500,000, right? I've had people say, well, we're going to give you this big chunk of change, but we want to make sure that you talk about this or you do this. No, not interested. I'm not for sale. Nobody handed me money and said, Chris, go and advocate for this for me, like politicians do, with many other influencers, by the way. You think those influencers that are popping up in other provinces, constantly crapping on Alberta and Alberta independence, telling us we can't because we'll lose our airports or whatever. Do you think that they're doing it because they want to? No, they're getting paid to do it. And here we are, coming out for supper, paying for it ourselves, advocating for a better future because the politicians won't. That's why this is working. That's why this movement is growing. Corey Morgan and I, we did a tour called Ambassadors for Alberta Independence, or Alberta Independence Ambassadors, something like that. We want to create disciples for Alberta Independence because that's how this is won. It's not by me coming up and venting about a news release that I saw that's going to turn this. It's you folks that are going to do it. We need to create disciples. We need to create ambassadors that bring this message out into their communities, to all of the people in the communities, every Alberta, because they don't come here. We went and we did that at times when there was, we did one in Fort McMurray, there was 14 people. 14 people! We flew up there, it cost us thousands of dollars, and we spoke to 14 people about how to be ambassadors for Alberta independence. And 4 of them at least only were there because they wanted me to advocate against the premier. 6 years, and you're still showing up, and it's growing. And we have a referendum in the fall. I didn't think we were going to have a referendum in the fall. Last year, just prior to the election, the federal election, that we all remember, where the elbows just really elbowed Western Canada again. I had resigned as the CEO of the Alberta Prosperity Project, I believe the last previous October or November, something like that. And it was out of necessity. I was exhausted. I was broke. I couldn't be away from my business anymore. And somebody else needed to take up the torch. And they did. And that was all fine. But it was kind of a lull. We were back to our lives, just doing our thing, thinking that someone was going to come and save us. Who was going to come and save us? No. Who did Albertans think was going to come and save them? Who filled stadiums with people that thought Alberta was going to be saved if we just elected this politician? Dear Paulia, the best apple leader I've ever seen in my life. I have nothing against. But we were in this lull because we have this idea, this misconception that's been programmed into our brains that somebody was going to come and save us from what we had to work to save ourselves from. And so the independence movement went by the wayside, and so many of my friends that are in this were like, well, we just got to do this. We just got to get the care elected because it'll be so much better. And I'm like, no, it won't. Have you learned nothing? Not only has no prime minister in Canadian history ever been able to advocate for a better deal for the West, not only, it's not even guaranteed he's going to win. Oh no, they got a 30-point lead. How'd that work out? And here we are. That campaign, that Trump fear-based campaign that the Liberals waged on Canadians, was probably the best thing that ever happened to Alberta. Even though things aren't getting marginally better like they may have with Pierre Poilievre. Because all of the Albertans that have been sitting in these rooms that were happy to go back to their lives and just be content we were going to elect a conservative, end quote, government in Canada, they saw something that really drove home what we've been saying this whole time. Nobody is coming to save you. The structure of Canada is not broken. It's operating exactly the way it was intended to. Alberta, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, Manitoba were never, ever meant to be equal partners in Confederation, and that will not change. We will not be able to open the Constitution. We cannot open the Constitution. And the longer we spend spinning our wheels, listening to politicians tell us and believing them that they're going to fix things, they can just fix Canada that isn't broken, and we're going to have a sovereign province within the United Canada, no more. I will not fall for that anymore. My attention span for those that wish to keep this system the way it is done. So for the next few months, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to travel around the province, and I'm going to talk to Albertans just like you about why we need to act, why we all need to be leaders. Maybe not someone up on a stage or cooking pierogies, but leaders, ambassadors for Alberta, sharing what you know to be true, wearing what you know to be true, that you can purchase from lovely Jessica at the back and the overpriced merchandise we have. Nicer. If we do this, if we can push for the next, how many months is that? What are we in? April? Almost May? Man. In less than 6 months, you are about to get an opportunity that people have fought hundreds of years of wars for. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have died globally. To be able to be afforded the opportunity to pursue self-governance, to chart their own course forward. In less than 6 months, you get that. You get that. I was pointing at you, Tanya. You already know I was pointing at the camera. And it only matters if we get to work. I really hope that there are some folks here tonight that are on the fence. I hope that there's some people that are opposed to my opinion. We had some last night in Red Cliff, and it was fantastic. Some people who we've really chirped at each other on social media, because it's easy to do that, right? I mean, it's not a human being, it's just a screen. So you can call it whatever you want, back and forth. They were there. They wanted to hear what I had to say. I shook their hands. We had a conversation. We left like human beings. It was pleasant. Maybe they still don't agree with me. I still don't agree with them, but we got to do that. And this is the starting point for the change that we all want to see as Albertans. As Albertans who believe that we should be making our own choices. So when I say, you know, we need to create ambassadors or disciples for Alberta independence, that is the truth. All of the biggest cultural and societal changes have all been multi-level marketing. I'll tell you, you tell two people, they tell two people, they tell two people. Next thing you know, you have changed. This is not a go to a meeting, go home, sit on the couch and watch TV. This is a go to a meeting, learn something, really learn something, get to understand even a couple of these points. Go home and call somebody. Get on the phone and share with somebody what you learned. Get on the phone and ask somebody, what did you think of Smith's speech today? What did you think of her talking about not doing an Alberta Revenue Agency and ensuring that Alberta will never be sovereign within a united Canada? What did you think about that? Maybe it's a forever Canadian, China, the China name, I don't know, a forever Canadian person. Maybe they're opposed to Alberta independence because they want a sovereign Alberta within the United Canada because of the emotional attachment, the patriotic attachment to the red and white flag. Maybe now that's their turning point. Not just the MPs that have crossed the floor and ensured that we had a majority government that's going to implement some of the most tyrannical policies this country's ever seen. Start talking to people and be bold about it. You are no longer the fringe minority. You are no longer a dirty separatist. Your opinion about Alberta's future is no longer something to be looked or talked down on. Those that oppose the idea of an independent Alberta, they're proud to scream at people, to put cigarette burn marks in their faces. They don't have any kind of hesitation sharing their opinion that they want to remain subjugated like we are within Canada. Why are we so embarrassed and shy to share our opinion? That is over. The time for that is gone. The time for, we're not going to talk about religion and politics because it's impolite, is over. Because that's gotten us where we are today. That's why this is called Let's Talk Alberta. It's not called Let's Talk and everything's going to be pleasant and everyone's going to agree. It's called Let's Talk because we need to start talking. There's a big divide here. We have big problems. And if we don't talk about them openly and unabashedly, bad things will happen. I guarantee it. In my travels, I have met many people who have lost hope completely in the system, in the legal, plausible, and probable path to change. Completely lost hope. And that is a very, very dangerous thing. Because when somebody doesn't have hope, they do stupid things. So your job is to talk and bring that hope to people. Bring the hope of a better future for Alberta. Because of all the bad things that have happened, by the way, all of those things that have happened to Alberta that we think are so terrible and ruined everything, those are blessings. That is the shit, pardon me, that is fertilizing our field right now. Those are the lemons that we're going to make lemonade, which is probably a more appropriate analogy than my previous one. Do you understand what I'm saying? Hope was never gone. We just didn't see it. So when you leave here tonight, I want these words to be rattling around in your brain like they do in mine, and I have a hard time processing them and getting them out in a methodical manner, by the way. But I want you to be thinking about these things. I want you to be thinking about your duty to advocate for what you believe in. Your duty to be a disciple for a better future for this province, soon to be nation. Your duty to stand up for what you believe, even though someone's going to throw a rotten tomato at you. Because that's sure as hell better than 20 or 30 years down the line, looking back at what our kids are going through, wishing we did it back then. This day today, this is the first day of your life. The rest of your life. This is the day that you can think about 20 years ago, and you're going to either think, I did what I needed to do, or you're going to think, why didn't I do it? I think like that all the time. Why didn't I buy Bitcoin when it was $3? Why didn't I do it 20 years ago? Stop thinking like that. Start thinking about what are you going to do today? Not tomorrow, not next week, today, tonight. Who are you going to call tonight? That's how we win this. We're not waiting for somebody else. We're not pandering to ideas that we know don't work, because that's where everyone else is going. We have a goal, and the goal is a sovereign Alberta. That's what I want. That's where I'm going. Independence is the tool, and nothing will deter me. No politician will sway me. No rich benefactor is going to tell me, oh, I'll help fund your thing, but only if you talk about these things. Screw that. I've gotten this far with grassroots participation. We'll take it the whole way with it as well. That's not what I wanted to talk about. I had a completely different thing planned. And it just,
Then you listen to Daniel Smith.
what you hear from me is the sum of my experiences so far. It is not scripted. It's completely raw. It's on the spot, and it's from the heart. I mean these things. That's not to say that I'm not always, that sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'm wrong. But what you see is what you get. So I hope that you can appreciate that. Anyway, we're going to have a little break, about 10 minutes, probably 15, because that's the way it goes. We have lots to talk about. I'm hoping that you help us out by, please, for the love of food, buy some pierogies and take them home.
They're good.
They're delicious. Yes, they're really good. And then we'll come back and have a Q&A. And, you know, maybe your questions are about how to talk to people about these things. Maybe your questions are about opposition points. There is no stupid questions. I mean, well, Corey and I think there are, but there really aren't. There are people that legitimately believe that the next day after a referendum, Alberta won't be able to have international air travel. There are people that believe that. So we need to talk about it. It's about talking. So have a break. Be back in 10 to 15 minutes and we'll keep going. Okay. By the way, we'll be right back. Oh, yeah, go for the MC. Really good job. Thanks. Yeah. Off the shirt, guys. Tonight. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for the 1399 super chat. International exchange is not worth all value as is real.
I'll put it down.
So we have so many rules and laws. We have a registration documents here, document, so whoever has the following Alberta plate, Charlie, Mike, Foxtrot, 7364, we have your documents in here, your wallet and everything. Thank you very much. I will still have there's still lots of monkeys left. So you might, if you're still going out there, you might consider maybe some monkeys back home for tomorrow for lunch.
I'm not making it. And it's
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start soon, so I'd like to please get yourself seated. This is the 2 minute warning. So please get yourself seated. We're going to start soon. Please, and all the speakers, there's some tables on chairs there, and 2 microphones for you. So if you know people outside just saying no to get in, we're going to start very soon. And also, Richard Lord is calling. Are we good to go? We good to go? Good to go? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the Q&A session, right? And this is getting warm up, I guess. So the way the Q&A is now going to work is I will hold the mic, and I have a very specific reason why I hold the mic. Is because it's my microphone. Like I hold the phone. I hold the phone, anyways. And I will hold the microphone to you. So please raise your hand if you have any questions. I will run to you. I will hold the mic, and please it short and concise. So who's gonna be my next one? Raise your hand, don't be shy. Okay, I'm gonna start with over there. So we got the game. So just for the sake of time and constraints, we're trying to give the questions under 30 seconds, no statements. Go ahead. I'll hold the mic.
All right. Question. I read lots on Facebook and X and whatever, and I see people say, go do your own research. So where would you send people to get the best information so they can answer questions when people say, well, why are you thinking that way?
Well, I think Corey would say, his site. I would say stoptruckstop.ca/blog. Tanya would probably say Farm Geek and Alberta Prosperity Project. There's lots of places you can go, but when possible, always try and go back to the originating document. So if someone's talking about a treaty, well, best thing to do is go on the Government of Canada website and look at the treaty, read the originating document. Same with the Constitution. Lots of people have opinions on all these things, but the only way to, truly figure out where you stand on it is to go back and read the original.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add, we got this great resource, these phones. I say this a lot over and over again. We're in this brilliant time when we've got more access to information at our fingertips than we've ever had in human history. But we've also got more access to BS than we've ever had at any time in human history. And it keeps coming back to that same theme. It's personal responsibility. You've got to kind of act like a leader in the newsroom. Find a corroborating source. Somebody said something to you and you find it hard to believe. Maybe search around and either find a second source for it or confirm that perhaps it's not true. So there's no solitary site. What I'd say is try to find multiple sites if it's something questionable. But there are a lot of good resources, CPP and Whistle Stop and places where you can find a lot of those things.
I went on the website today that Daniel Smith was talking about to get more information on the referendum questions, and I noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't notice any reference to the separation or independence referendum.
Yeah, that's to be expected because it's not actually it's not on the books yet, right? There hasn't been something to compel that question to be asked. The other questions that you see are their government sponsored questions. The questions that the government wants to ask. The independence referendum question is something from the citizens, so it has to complete the citizens process.
Next question?
Yeah, John here. If the independence party gets voted through, we should make sure that there's no more different parties. That there's going to be just one party, called the Alberta party or whatever it's going to be. One of us municipal government. This way, there's no division, divide and conquer anymore. And if it goes through, where do we still have to be abide by the British hierarchy?
Okay, so when Alberta becomes independent and sovereign, that is a complete rejection of the current structure, constitution, monarchy, all of it. And Albertans get to decide under what laws they'll be governed. So that would occur through a constitutional convention where people would, get together. By the way, for the first time in Canadian history, because this has never happened in Canada, where the people get together and decide what the Constitution looks like, what form of government is, those types of things. But just to be very, very clear, I am unaware of any independence party that has even a reasonable chance of gaining one seat. So this isn't about a political party. This is about specifically a grassroots initiative to compel the government to ask that question. The government doesn't change at that point. It's just the government has to facilitate the question.
Yeah, just to go a little further about parties, and I know that the infighting, the backroom deals, the stuff that sours people on partisan politics in general is frustrating. The unfortunate thing is in politics, they're a necessary evil, and for the sake of democracy, you need to have multiple ones. I've gone through, people said we should ban parties, for example, and so on, and going through that theoretical conversation, let's say we had a legislature with 200 seats, and they had 200 independents selected in, there was no party. But you still got to have one person who kind of speaks for the legislature. So, okay, we'll have those 200 people vote on that. But there's 5 people got nominated for it. Well, how are we going to deal with that? Well, groups form around those 5 people. And then 2 of the 5 think their campaign isn't going to work well enough. So they join, and suddenly you're down to 3 people running in 3 groups. And guess what? You've just formed 3 political parties. And that's just the way the system naturally evolves. We need better checks and balances so that the parties can serve as better or as well as they can, I guess. But I haven't been able to see a system where parties aren't there. The worst thing that happens if you get rid of them is then you get unofficial parties, which are even actually worse than the official ones that can be believed. Sorry?
Why does the civil government work so well?
Why does the civil government work so well? Yeah, municipal. It doesn't work very well. I mean, maybe it's a little better down here, but you get like the city of Calgary or the city of Toronto, and you see those guys going at each other and the deals they cut and the things they do behind closed doors. It's, yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean, because then you get unofficial parties and alliances, and it's even dirtier actually than the ones that wear their allegiance openly like the other ones. So it's frustrating though. I know what you mean.
I'll answer why municipal government works better in some people's opinion. It's because municipal government is a figment of the legislature's imagination. Municipal government exists because of legislation. So we elect people, they write legislation that creates municipal governments. It's not a constitutional form of government. So the way it's worked is we would elect people based on how they want that legislation to look. So a municipal governance structure is more in line with what the people want rather than what was imposed on them. Does that make sense? Our provincial government and our federal government exist within the Constitution. Well, the Constitution wasn't written by us. The Constitution was written in England by the Crown and some Canadian elitists. And then that was imposed on us. Therefore, it's not something that we advocated for and asked for. The municipal governance legislation, in a roundabout way, is because we elect the people that create that. Does that make sense?
Next question?
Well, hold on, Candy, you had something.
It's not huge, but just that there's gonna be a couple, I know for sure, proposed constitutions that are being worked on right now. And they'll be coming out for people to get some feedback and to provoke some thoughts. So it's, again, it's important for people to start asking those kinds of questions and thinking about what system of government do you want? What has worked globally in different parts of the world in the past? What's some things we could change? It's important to look at the mistakes that we've made in the past or the mistakes that have been imposed on us and make sure that we don't take those all into a new sovereign Alberta, that we're trying to build something better than what we've had in the past.
I'd be interested to know how many people in this room, believe when they're in a group and the land acknowledgement is the introduction to an event. Whether they would be willing to speak out to say that that was a false conception address. That the person on stage is saying, we all here recognize that we are on Treaty 8, Treaty 7 property, blah, 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 blah. I myself personally sitting in the crowd, I do not agree to that. I don't want to even partake in an event that has that. So I think we should all be comfortable in our conversation that we have after tonight to say that we recognize the land acknowledgements as false conception addresses because it's being imposed on us. Now, if the person doing the land acknowledgement would take the opportunity to say, wouldn't they like to hear the land acknowledgement? I bet everybody in the crowd, 2/3 probably would put up their hand. No, we don't hear it.
Yeah, I mean, people are getting sick and tired of that acknowledgements, just to be blunt. And that's why I kind of do my cheeky ones at events when I get to them. I think it was Max or somebody, yeah, you kind of, at one event I did a land acknowledgement for about 30 seconds.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
And he put it out on video, just that short clip, and it had like 500,000 views or something.
900,000 views that clip alone.
And it wasn't, again, your typical land acknowledgement. It was me saying I live on my own private property that I paid a mortgage on, have a deed for, and I don't give a shit who walked on it 500 years ago.
It was the ultimate acknowledgement. That was awesome.
But that was like the favorite people are tired of it. And at that presentation, I'll just go a little further. The land acknowledgements aren't harmless, they're dangerous, they're indoctrination, they're a repetitive cult-like chant, and they're trying to tell the next generation that they don't deserve to be here, that they don't have property rights, that they owe somebody else something based on their race, and they're odious and wrong in 100 different ways. And we have to start pushing back against these things, and we can't tolerate them. So how to do it is difficult. As you said, it's also insulting when a person stands in front of the room and says, I want the whole room to acknowledge what I'm saying. Well, no, you're not speaking for everybody there. You're one person. All I can say is keep questioning it. I mean, I'm part of a rock and lapidary club in Calgary. You know, that's where all the cool kids hang out in their spare time. And even in our monthly meetings of that, they do a bloody acknowledgement to start the meeting off. And it's just painful. But what do? You gotta get through the board and go through that and try and shut it down. I just say keep pushing back, keep even I say mocking it. There's important things with treaties and so on, and we can respect those. And we can respect them without doing a stupid bloody land acknowledgement at every hockey game or kindergarten class start of the day.
Yeah. Just before I get to my next questions, if you have questions, just raise your hand. I see The lady over there has a question. I'm going back to you. Just raise your hand so I can go after, okay? Just to remember things. Okay. Over there, please.
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. You said there are no dumb questions, but this one you might think is a bit dumb. Wouldn't it be nice to kind of have Justin's plan of bringing all these new immigrants in and have it work against him? Is there any way we could target, I can't remember which one of you said, the emotional connection to Canada? They don't have any emotional connection to Canada, but they're here for economic reasons. Is there any way that we could somehow use that, somehow get the message to them of how much better off they would be here under an independent Alberta?
That's a fantastic question. And I'll tell you, I've got one more for you. Let me answer that one first. In my interactions with Albertans, many of which are new Albertans from other countries, I can tell you that the people that are the most fired up and the most ticked off with what's going on in Canada and the most supportive of an independent Alberta are new immigrants. It's because these people, are not saying these people still? They gave up their life in their previous nation. They spent thousands to tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars to come here for freedom, opportunity, and prosperity. And then they're watching Canadians sitting watching hockey games while their country collapses. And they're pissed. Like there's a couple of guys that they come and stock with Stock Cafe, and there's a couple of Indian guys, one from Lebanon. They're all guest workers, like they're temporary workers, because these companies can't find people to fill these roles. So I strike up conversations about Alberta independence, and they're like, man, we're citizens, we'd sign the heartbeat. So what's going on is ridiculous. So it is already happening.
Great. Tanya, I was just wondering what you thought of what happened with the ostriches and CFIA. It's frightening. I mean, these people hate our beach down. Do you think they're going to go after us now that he's got a majority? Or he's got this majority?
Well, last year they passed Bill C-293, which was the Climate Preparedness Act or something like that. And under the veil of that, they put a piece of legislation in there that says that in an emergency, they can come and seize your land and seize your herd. So I think that they're setting the tone of, like, the plan's already there in place. Why else would you legislate something like that? That's an absurd piece of legislation to me that you would write that in there. You could take someone's land, someone's herd. So,
And that's what they did in BC.
yeah, and that was pretty gross with the levels of humanity that we have for the humane treatments of animals. Normally in the protocols that we have to follow, if you have cattle and livestock, that didn't seem to be following any of that.
Do we go to the next question?
Before we do that, I just want to ask folks, if you're unhappy with what the CFIA is doing, what our policies are in that regards, what are you going to do about it?
The Canada has become an Alberta independent.
Max goes.
Of course. I have to say aye. Alberta independence, no, just kidding. Go ahead.
I'm wondering, with most of our banking being federal, how that would look in the independent world if we've already got all our money in these federal bankings. What's the banking gonna look like?
So the question is more what's going to happen when money is in a federally chartered bank? What's going to happen after separation, right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of things, just to remind people, the day after a yes vote, everything's gonna still be exactly the same. We're gonna be moving on towards the process, the constitutional convention, and a number of other things. The banks will still be running, pension checks will still be coming in, until that transfer happens. Banks, money is transferable. They work across borders all the time. I have an American bank account, not much in it, but it is down in the States. Toronto Dominion operates down in the United States, laundering money all the time. Bank of Hong Kong is here in Canada, but banks can be international, and they are often. So it shouldn't be that much of a concern. It's quite easy to move financial institutions or have them operate within multiple countries. The bigger concern would be the value of your holdings if they're in Canadian dollars, because post-independence, the Canadian dollar probably isn't going to be as valuable as it used to be. So that's a matter of your own financial management and what you would do with it. But as far as banks go, it would be one of the easier problems actually to kind of solve.
Before getting to my next question, if you have questions, just raise your hand. I'm gonna go after my next, this gentleman here. Okay, just raise your hand so I can go after you and, okay, just go on the microphone. Okay, step up, speak a little bit. Go ahead, sir.
First of all, I want to thank you guys for all your hard work. And, okay. And the gentleman that mentioned earlier about the new immigrants to Canada, I'm one of those dirty immigrants that came from the UK 18 years ago, and I escaped the UK when it was basically where you are now. So the population of Alberta has increased dramatically in the last decade or two. And it's not becoming less conservative because many of us like me came here to escape this garbage somewhere else. And now it's happening here. So my question is, with a quick Google search here, numerous Alberta First Nations benefit from energy industry through equity partnerships, employment, procurement, etc. Fort Mackay, Makisuku Creek, Chippewa Prairie, Athabasca, Chippewa First Nations. So is there anything being done to change the narrative around First Nations who would benefit from independence? I know it's not a huge percentage of the population, but it's enough possibly to make a difference. And we're all going to have to live together post-independence. And we don't want to continue with the status quo with the reserves and so on, and people live in squalor. Can we not start to make more of a big deal of the First Nations people who are benefiting from the energy industry in Alberta, and their voices be heard? Is there anything we can do further? Thank you.
Well, first I'll say, while First Nations are roughly 6%, I believe, of the population of Alberta, they're relevant and they're Albertans, and they deserve to not only be heard, but they deserve freedom and prosperity as well. I would ask anyone that mentions First Nation people how they think the system is benefiting them now. If there's any group of people, no matter how big or how small in this province, that stand to benefit from Alberta independence, it's First Nations people, for sure. There's no question about that. If you're asking if we have any specific initiatives targeting that group, not really. And there's a reason for that. There are gatekeepers that prevent the conversations from ever getting to the people. And it seems like those who benefit the most from the status quo, the current system, are also the most vocal and the ones that hold the levers of power, right? They're the ones writing letters to the king. They're the ones going to England to talk to the king. They're the ones going to Ottawa and asking Carney to stop Alberta independence. The people, on the other hand, are living in some of the most worst statistics in all of Canada. So, while it's very difficult to do any specific initiatives for that group of people, I can tell you that, it is on people's minds. And the sad reality is it's not actually up to us. I am not a signatory to any treaty. It's none of my business what that group of people choose. I can share my opinion, and I've written a couple articles about why I believe First Nations should support Alberta independence. But at the end of the day, it's their choice. They get to choose if they want to get rid of the treaties, keep the treaties, renegotiate, negotiate with the nation of Alberta, whatever. It's totally up to them. And that's all the insight I have, if you can call that insight.
I just said the outreach is very difficult. As Chris said, they got gatekeepers. I literally have been charged with trespassing for shooting video of the Siksika Reserve off of the highway. We're going to trial at the end of June for that. That's how bad it is though, because I was pointing out how they got $1.3 billion and it looks like Tijuana in there. So where's the money going? And they don't want people asking, and it wasn't the reserve that charged me, it was the chiefs, it was the councilors, because they know where the 1.3 billion went. But, we need to outreach under those reserves, because it is hard to get through. You will literally run into things like that, like being charged or getting in trouble. I hope the only people who can really speak to somebody in reserve, somebody's already got connections there. And if there's people in the room who do have it, it'd be good to be able to reach out how you can. Because you gotta get past those chiefs. I despise it when legacy media says, oh, First Nation said this, First Nation said that. No, a bunch of chiefs said that. I don't know what the people on the ground said. We never hear from them. And anybody who's been on the reserves, as Chris pointed out, knows that the status quo is not serving them well at all. So I do invite, when I'm talking about people going out, to reach out and spread the word on independence. If you've got connections on the reserves, by all means reach out. And if you don't got connections on the reserves, don't try going knock doors on there. You're gonna have a real bad time.
I've noticed too in the last week even just that there's been a couple Indigenous fellows come out on social media and advocating for Alberta independence on their own platforms and saying that the chiefs in their places don't speak for them necessarily. And then other people have brought up that canvassers that had set up close to reserves did have a lot of Indigenous coming actually to sign the independence petition as well. And then just another thing that I've been thinking about that is maybe kind of a unifying concept for all Albertans going forwards, whether you're on the reserves or not, is that we don't currently have property rights protected in the Constitution. And as much as I would love to have property rights definitely protected as we go forward, maybe that's something that might help to break some of the cycle that's been going on in reserve as well. Maybe property rights is a ticket for everybody to experience more freedom, more pride, a better path forward.
And to add to that, Kit Wilson in Warrenville was stated that the most performing canvassers are Métis because of how Canada has treated them, basically. So and this is another comment that we hear on town halls, not just on the independence, but in general. I think in Alberta as well, when Corey Morgan was talking about the national acknowledgement stuff, there was a gentleman over there from the Sitka Reserve as well, who was saying that conditions were terrible over there, right? So we'll go to the next question, then another one here. If you got any questions, just raise your hand. We'll see a gentleman over there. We'll go after that. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering about the pension, particularly CPP pension from the federal government, and then like OAS that could be handled by Alberta, or how with the pensions, how would you see them working?
Well, the CPP, we overpaid drastically into it. So there's a lot of money sitting there. When you look at, like one of the really great documents to look at for all of the economic questions, called The Value of Freedom. Some of you might be familiar with that. It was put out by a group and it's on the Alberta Prosperity.com website. And it's a fully costed fiscal document for a sovereign Alberta. So it addresses CPP and OAS in there as well. But the numbers that they're showing is that CPP, if we bring it back to an Alberta pension plan, the payouts would actually be double what they are now. So we would be treating our seniors twice as good as what they're currently getting with CPP, but the contributions would only need to be halved. So we wouldn't be taxing our working population nearly as much either. That's in there. It's a public document. It's been out for about a year, reviewed by economists and open to the public for feedback. So I would trust those numbers quite a bit.
And OAS is a big one people keep asking, and then that's a government federal, basically a federal program with an entitlement. It would have to be replaced because too many people dependent on that supplement. I mean, that's just the way it is. And a lot of people, pensions, the number one question actually we have at least typically. The main thing is assuring people, I mean, there's lots of different plans and things we can do with the pension, as Tanya laid out. We certainly have the funds to do it. But also, just always remember, no matter what happens in the negotiations or what goes on, we are not going to let our Albertan seniors be left hanging. We're going to take care of it. If the federal government does something stupid and cuts off OAS payments, we'll make it up. We've got the money. We're never going to let any of our citizens be financially in bad shape because of because they become independent. The point is to make it better for everybody, and we have the means to do it. But we do have to make people comfortable about it. It's sad that there's so many people that really are one OAS payment or CPP payment away from insolvency. That's how tight things are for a lot of people, and that's why they're concerned. So we can make it better. We also, we know that. We love our neighbors. We're not gonna let our neighbors down on this one.
Is our CPP payments livable? Okay. I saw an interview a little while ago with a fellow in Venezuela. And this hits close to my heart because I've experienced this, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. The question posed to this Venezuelan was, why did you guys, like, you have democracy, you can vote, why didn't you guys just get rid of this government years ago? Like, you ran your country into the ground. It took you from a beautiful, prosperous, resource-rich nation with huge tourism industry and a bright future to a communist, like, hellhole. And he said, because the government gave us food and told us that if we didn't support them, the next government might not. And we wouldn't get that food. And it wasn't good food. A lot of times it was spoiled. It wasn't enough, but it was more than nothing. Now we have some forever Canadian people coining the term hands off my CPP, telling people that in an independent Alberta, you're going to lose your CPP. Well, they're saying, if you support anything other than the status quo, we're going to take away your bread box. We're going to take away your food box. And even though it's crap, than nothing, so you should support us. That's the fear campaign that's been used for thousands and thousands of years, just dressed up with different things. Now, just real quickly, I'll tell you why this is close to my heart. I worked in Colombia in 2017 and 2018. And, or maybe even in 19, I can't remember, it's a blur. But anyway, I would fly into Bogota, and then from Bogota, I'd fly to my field office, and close to my field office. The airport there, it was a 3-hour drive to my office. And upon occasion, we would drive through like thousands of people walking with, bedrolls and like hobo bags, on the stick or whatever, walking, some of them with bare feet. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, is this some sort of pride parade? But there are no rainbow flags? I couldn't help myself. Nobody laughed. Anyway, it was Venezuelans walking from Venezuela through Colombia into Ecuador, Peru, whatever, wherever they were going. So I witnessed this firsthand. I witnessed the result of people failing to take control of their sovereignty and chart their own first border. And this occurred for months. When I first got there, they were much closer to the airport, and then after a month, they're kind of getting close to my field office. One day I go drive down the lease road, and the jungle's cleared, there's like tarps up, this little shanty town. I'm like, what the heck is going on? The Venezuelans had arrived there and they just set up camp and do whatever. And after a couple of days, I'd be driving to work and I would see young girls sitting in chairs on the side of the road. And you don't even want to know the answer I got when I asked why those girls were sitting there after a few days. But you can imagine, this is where things go when people fail to think critically about their civic choices. When they let other people make the decisions for them and think that they're going to let someone come and save them from the impending disasters that are facing their society. If you can't even comprehend that unless you see it. There's no way I would have, I knew it was occurring, but until I saw it, I couldn't process it. Just like when I couldn't process the idea that a Canadian citizen could go to jail for protest. Well, that doesn't make sense. Must have done something terrible. Until I was lying in jail for protesting. So we have to ask ourselves, how much of this stuff do we have to actually see firsthand and experience firsthand before we start to shake off the apathy and become civically engaged to take control of our future? He's one question at the back there, and then we'll be right back.
Considering the state of our public school system, which is essentially an overfunded charade at this point, what would that look like under independence? Also taking into account most Albertans and can't really afford to homeschool their kids.
Well, if people don't get involved, it's going to look exactly the same as it does now, because it's a provincial jurisdiction and our provincial government manages it. So unless we're involved and we're kind of spearheading the changes we want to see, nothing will change. And that's the reality of an independent Alberta. Alberta independence does not guarantee anything. The only thing it guarantees is that for the first time in Canadian history, Albertans will be able to chart their own course forward, for better or for worse. So if we become independent and everyone goes back to sleep, they're back watching hockey instead of going to the CA meeting, instead of being involved in local politics, school boards, stuff like that, nothing will change. It will be the same. This is a participation sport. But the key is, right now, it doesn't matter how much we try and participate with certain things, we're unable to affect change. And independent Alberta gives us the opportunity to make it better. And that's kind of where the hard part comes in, that we have to go to work and we can't stop.
Yeah, I'll just add, and we can't say for sure what policies Albertans will adopt post-independence, but it offers a clean break to be able to bring in a new and better system. I mean, I'll just offer what I like. I like voucher systems. It's the true equal way to go. There's this much dedicated for every student, and it will follow them wherever they may go, equal amount, whether you go to homeschooling, a public school, a private school, and then parents, if they want to spend more on top of that, that's their business. But just the same amount per student and allow mobility and choice for parents. And I just can't think of a better way to go. But to try to do that within the existing structure, it's going to be darn difficult. As we really get the opportunity to try and get something like that with the new Alberta.
Yeah, actually campaigning a little bit on that at one point in my life too, the voucher system. And from my perspective, there's lots of logistics to work out with it, but you're creating basically some competition within the school system, that schools will be compelled to create a community that reflects what the families in that community would like for the education system. And then they would also have to staff that school appropriately, because that voucher system, that money is going to come with attracting more students from the community. So to me, it kind of makes sense to actually increase a little bit of competition that increases the merit base of the people that you're hiring, solves a lot of issues that way.
And I want to let you know right now, the spending in school districts is pretty darn transparent. I went and looked at some information publicly available, and every school district posts this. I looked at the Office of the Superintendent spending in my area. And I found out that our superintendents are going to other countries 3 or 4 times a year. And basically recruiting international students. And now they're trying to say, well, they pay more when they come here. No, it doesn't work like that. It costs us money. But they're going and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on trips. And if they drive from downtown Edmonton to, Mundare, and they buy coffee, well, they bill the taxpayer for the coffee. They charge for the mileage. They charge for everything. And some of the stuff that I saw was just insane. 3 or 4 conferences a year, between $1,000 and $3,000 to go to each of these conferences, plus meals, plus hotels, plus travel. So the expenditures for one person was like $700,000. Now this information is publicly available online. Any one of us parents could have gone and looked at this at any time and said, well, how come we can afford to send a superintendent to Milan and then to Tokyo and then to Berlin, recruiting international students, but our classrooms are overcrowded and we can't get funding for the things we need. So this is already something that we're guilty of allowing to happen. And it really drives home the idea that this isn't just about creating something new. It's about creating something new in the way we act. It's about creating a new habits for ourselves where we're paying attention to these things. Because if we don't, it's just going to continue to happen.
Before we get into the next question, I'd like to talk to the people who are watching online, because I watched the chat here. If you have questions, just put the exclamation marks, and when you get to the online questions right after, okay? So, third question, go ahead.
Sure. Okay, so when we become independent, what's going to happen to the other parties? Like the NDP can scrap them, the Liberal Party, get rid of them. Moving for our own representatives to run the independent party of Alberta, or how's that going?
Well, it wouldn't look anything like it does now. So not timeline, but the way it would go would be referendum successful, negotiations begin, negotiations fail, declaration of independence. Constitutional convention, we choose our form of government. We choose how government looks. So the idea that any of the existing parties would just automatically move into the new nation of Alberta as they are now, that wouldn't happen. They would have to follow the new rules that we've created for them, for the party system, for governance, whatever. So it's, yeah, it would be whatever we collectively decided that it would be.
Yeah, just to add, in a democracy, and we want to have one, and we want to have a free one, that means we'll still have the right to have parties put out stupid ideas and run on them. It's up to us to stay engaged and make sure they don't win again. Again, the responsibility comes back to us. The NDP and Liberals will only disappear if people stop voting for them. And I hate to say it, but some Albertans still do. So, somebody I spoke with, I can't remember which meeting it was, she was English, and she was talking about Brexit. Part of the mistake they made too, was they got there, they won the referendum, and then they took their hands off the steering wheel and the gas, and then they just let it go to hell. The work doesn't stop the day after yes vote. It doesn't stop after we get a new constitution and we get a new system and we get a new government in power. We've got to remember this and stay an engaged population for generations from now, because we take our hands off the steering wheel, we know where it's going to go every time. So those parties, I hope they vanish because they're vital, but it's up to us.
Next question.
How are you going to make sure that when we have the referendum, that the vote isn't going to be, messed with? I mean, who's gonna look over?
I love this question.
Oversee that?
This is an awesome question. The answer is you. You are. If you're concerned about the integrity of an election or a referendum or whatever, it's nobody else's job to be involved to make sure that it's legit except you. And anybody can do that. Anybody can scrutineer, anybody can volunteer, anybody can count, those types of things. So again, it's a participation thing. It's not me that's going to make sure that it's legit and on the up and up. It's you.
Yeah, and just for people who might not be familiar with elections, I mean, a lot of people haven't participated. Scrutineering means though anybody can register and go in, and it's actually a good system. I've seen it in other elections. You could be there from the moment in the morning when they open the ballot boxes and seal them to show you they haven't been restuffed. You can be around to watch the whole process all day to make sure you didn't see the same person coming over and over again or any funny business. You can be there when those boxes are open and literally be there as they count. And it's very tough to game that system, and there's not going to be any electronic counting. Smith already said that. The only way it can be gamed, though, as Chris said, is if we don't go in and watch. So it's a good system, but only if we use it.
Next question.
I've had people ask, well, how can we stop the corruption in this government in Alberta, Independence, Alberta? As like the crap that we're getting in Ottawa. So one of the things that we can do is don't take your hands off anything, but get involved. That's the only way we can keep the corruption out. Because if we don't see what's going on, we don't get involved in what's going on, we might as well not have an Alberta independence because we're going to be the same as we are right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And if we want to have a democracy and a system of government that brings the power back to the people have to be ready to embrace that power and act responsibly with it. Right? So I think that's a very good point.
One other thing though is one of the reasons why we see the corruption we do and the scandals we do with no accountability is because the system allows it. It's because the system wasn't written by the people who suffer the consequences of the corruption. It was written by those who want to engage in the corruption so that they can milk the people. And this is flipping the table. This is saying, no. We as people are going to tell those who wish to govern us the way in which they may govern. And these are the terms, these are conditions. You don't like it, it's off. Pardon me. That's the difference. The Constitution by the people, for the people, versus the Constitution imposed on the people, which we have right now.
Actually, I've seen one proposal or was proposed that we could actually have another branch of government. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, not another branch of government. That's the last thing we need. But this one actually I thought had merit because it was more of like an overwatch branch of government that would be elected, but they would be tasked with the specifics of making sure that the government sticks within its budget, and making sure that our judicial system acts to interpret the laws the way Albertans want to, and then also having the power to remove the people that act outside of that. So if they're overspending outside of our budget for Alberta, those people could be removed or call an election. And all of them would be elected, so the power comes back to the people, but then the responsibility also of electing the right people and making sure that we're acting with that responsibility.
We go to the next question?
I have a question about the military. What happens to the other bases? Yeah. There's a lot of federal infrastructure that we have to like account for in this. And again, I can refer you to the value of freedom because it goes through all of that as well. And Keith also does a really great job of actually explaining a lot of it. That we're not creating everything brand new here. It's more just a transition phase, right? So there is military bases here. We have to account for the cost of purchasing that infrastructure, of making sure that those people are hired and paid for by now a new government of Alberta. And then Canada's gonna have their list of things of what they think Alberta goes, and then it's just kind of okay, well, here's what the balance is at the end, and someone kind of cuts a check and it balances out that way. Obviously, we'll need to have a military. In our proposed budget in the value of freedom, which obviously is going to be ratified by Albertans, ultimately they decide this in the end. It's proposed that 3% of the budget, the federal budget of a new sovereign Alberta, goes to military every year. So you just know that there's that exact amount of spending that's going to that. And I think we can do probably a much better job of treating our military and our veterans with a higher level of respect and the honor that they deserve.
I'm just gonna take some polling questions. This is from Berlin 93. Is there any real conversations happening about bringing forward campaign ads from SFA/GP? I don't think we can respond on their behalf. Is that accurate? So the question is more like, is APP or State Free Alberta, I don't think she makes a decision if one of them are going to make any kind of ads on highways and that sort of thing. I don't think we can respond on their behalf, right?
Did you advertise in our ads?
Yes.
Oh, and I don't know specifically for ABP or State Free Alberta. ABP is kind of in hibernation until after the election campaign comes out or is finished anyways. But I anticipate there's going to be a lot of them that come out. A lot of third-party advertisements will be seeking out stabs. There'll be tons of advertisements going out all over the place, and it won't just be one group kind of leading. In the past, I think Alberta Prosperity was the major group leading the education and the merits for South Alberta. But in this next phase, I think you'll see a lot of different groups coming out with lots of information and perspectives, all heading in the same direction.
Okay. Another question, this is like kind of a weird question. It's more like a comment type of thing, similar to the one that we had last week about the infographics and everything. This is in regards to the document value of freedom. One user suggests that we need to put or condense the contents of the value of freedom into a poster or something. I think that there's already enough information. I think enough from Grants of Alberta as well. So the information is out there. What's your answer for that comment question?
I'll answer the same way I answer anybody that tells me that I need to do something. Why aren't you doing it?
Yep.
These are things that anybody can do. The information's available. You can find it. ChatGPT could be your best friend when you're trying to compile, stuff like this. The Alberta Prosperity Project website has tons of printable material that you can use. So I just want to remind people, this is a participation sport. So before you say, Chris, you should print out things and get them to people. You need to go say that by looking in the mirror and then go get on your computer in front of your printer.
And also there are AI tools. Again, I'm not AI. I'm a human in flesh, right? Because these things were all AI nanobots paid by Donald Trump, which is not true. But Grok and ChatGPT can actually condense information and make nice infographics as well. So it's up to you, basically. What I can do it, the prompts are there. It's very easy to do. And are there any questions? You just raise your hand if you have any remaining questions. Anyone?
If not, that's
Oh, there's one over there. I'm just going to give him a second over there. Actually, it's a gentleman over there. I'm running. I'm driving 80 miles an hour. Go ahead.
The federal debt is around $2 trillion. If Alberta gets their independence, what will their contribution be towards the federal debt?
Would you like my opinion? Because it's just an opinion.
Yes.
Zero. My opinion is that it should start at zero. And the reason for this is because over the history of Confederation, Alberta has contributed net, when adjusted for inflation, around $1.2 trillion. 1.2 trillion with a T. And that entire time, we have really not gotten much say at all in how the new debt is incurred. As an Albertan, were you okay that the federal government doubled the money supply and halved its value? Were you okay with what they did over COVID? Yeah, we've been paying and unable to influence how the money is spent. So I would start at zero, but the more realistic answer is this is one of those negotiation terms, and it's gonna be, you know, bean counters looking at these things. For instance, we overpaid 350, just about $400 billion to the CPP. So, you know, if we put that against what Canada said our share of the national debt was just by population, well, maybe we're at zero. You know, I don't believe that would be a good outcome, but it's a possibility, right? So the realistic answer is it's a negotiated thing, but I would start at zero, just looking at how Alberta's paid in the past.
Perfect. Any more questions here? One. Oh. Go ahead.
This has to do after the independence and we're separated. And you said, that, you know, obviously the Canada pension continues to be paid. However, after independence, I think the Canadian dollar is going to be below 50 cents, maybe lower than that. Would Alberta make up the difference in the CPP?
Yes, I think initially, if it's gonna leave our seniors hanging, we will find ways to make sure that that doesn't leave them bankrupt. These are things, so we talk about CPP is transferable. You move to Mexico, you move to Germany, you're still gonna collect your CPP. So even but the value of it was gonna go down, I understand. So I think one of our priorities though still, even if because we had to kick in extra to make sure we aren't bankrupting our seniors due to a collapsing dollar, we should be building our own plan as quickly as humanly possible and disconnecting from the dependency on that CPP as it is. But it's a concern. When the dollar goes down, with their reliance on dollars, it's gonna have a hard time. We will have to make sure we take care of everybody.
And anyone that I've talked to who is involved in conversations about this in the independence movement, there is nobody that I know that would ever disagree with what Corey just said. Like that is a hard floor there. Like under no circumstances can anybody get left behind. That's just the basics moral starting point of this whole thing.
Any more questions from the audience? 1, 2, 2.5, 2.75, 2.875. Okay, almost 3. I'm going to 6 digits now. Okay, go ahead.
One real quick question, does anybody have an idea what gun control is gonna be like once Alberta is independent?
An armed society is a safe society. But again, it's my opinion, and I will advocate very strongly.
Any more questions? Don't be shy.
That's actually okay. It's 9:30, so
Yes,
that's the time.
Absolutely. So I'd like to thank you everyone for coming in. That was a blessing, despite the wind that we have here. I know some people in my office actually lost power because of the weather. So I'd like to thank you everybody to come here, have yourself a nice trip home, be safe, watch for deers. And I want to also thank everybody who was watching online on either Freedom Canada stream, because I see some people on the back watching the stream, which is kind of odd. And the Chris Scott stream as well. So thank you very much for listening. Oh, by the way, we absolutely need help packing the shares. And no, Oh, no. Hold on a second. Go ahead.
The hall board said no with putting the chairs and tables away, they want to do it themselves.
Okay, so no action required then. Okay. Oh, well, Bruce, bring them. We need those girlies gone. And that's somebody else's building. Oh, very much. Somebody says, thank you guys for doing that thing. And thanks for the super chats and watching online. It was very helpful, and we'll see you next time.
Corey, check this out. Gotta find it.
Delegation.
Meow. That's awesome.